So does anyone have a black sheep in their family? Have you heard of that term? You know, the black sheep, the person in the family who's kind of like on the outside, like they don't exactly fit the mold of the rest of the family. In my family, there are me and my three siblings. And I think if I really look at it clearly growing up, I think that I was the black sheep in my family. I was the one who was always speaking out and always kind of rebelling. And I had my own opinion on how things should go and all of those things. I was the one who really stretched the rest of my family kind of thin with my behaviors and actions and choices. It seems like to me that every family has like at least one black sheep of the family, a person who's kind of on the outside. And maybe they're there because their views didn't match all the views of everybody else, or they don't conform to the familial norms in one way or another. This week, we're talking about awkward families in the Bible. Families that aren't perfect, they aren't together, and they're just plain a little bit awkward, probably like my family and your family. And today, I'm going to talk about the most awkward family in the Bible. I'm going to talk about Jesus' family. That's right. They're super, super awkward. You'd think that if God sent God's son to go be within a family, he would provide someone who seemed like their lives would at least be put together. God would want his son to have a stable family system for Jesus. But instead, God does something completely different. In the beginning of the New Testament, the author Matthew decides to provide a genealogy of Jesus. And this is important. This work that Matthew is doing to say Jesus' genealogy, it actually connects us all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, to the beginning of the story, to Genesis chapter 5. And what Matthew is doing in his own way is just connecting the birth of Jesus to the birth of creation, to the birth of humanity, to the beginning of time. And all the way back, it shows that then, if they're connected, that Jesus was part of God's intention all along. Here's what's so interesting about the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew chapter 5. The genealogy of Jesus, it includes women. Yeah. Now, at this time, this would not have been done ever. This would not included in other Jewish genealogy stories. If you look at other genealogies in the Bible, and they're throughout the Bible, women are never, ever named. It's always about the man who went to the man who went to the man. But Jesus his family's tree is different. He doesn't do that. Matthew doesn't write that way at all. Instead, Matthew, he names 5 women, and all 5 of those women, they are controversial women. And I think as a black sheep of my family, I love a controversial woman. Matthew names Tamar and Rahab. Matthew names Bathsheba and Ruth and Mary, finally Jesus' mom. And it gets crazier. Of the 5 women that Matthew names in Jesus' genealogy, 4 of them are not even Jewish. Only Mary, Jesus' mom, who likely descended from the kingly line of David, just like her husband Joseph, was Jewish. But the 4 other women in Jesus' genealogy, they were Gentiles, meaning that they were outside of the Jewish faith, making them even more black sheep. Tamar and Rahab, they were Canaanites, the race of people living in Canaan when the Israelites took possession of the land. And Ruth, she was a Moabite. And then there was Bathsheba. Yeah, and she might have been an Israelite by birth, that's possible, but she was married to Uriah the Hittite. The Bible is very clear about that, which legally made her a Hittite. So I want to talk about Tamar. Tamar was this childless widow, this woman who had been married to someone who was so bad that the Bible says that God put him to death. Can you imagine being married to that kind of man? But then, following the cultural practices of the time, Tamar had to marry her deceased husband's brother, who was also terrible to her. So he also died. But then Tamar, she took matters into her own hands. So she dressed up as a temple prostitute, and she went and convinced her father-in-law, Judah, who was such a lowlife, that he impregnated her. And then when it was discovered publicly that she was pregnant, he couldn't put her to death because he is the one who had done it. He had to take responsibility for Tamar, who took responsibility for her own life into her own hands. And then it was discovered that she had twins, and one of them One of these twins, Perez, is Jesus's great grandpa. You can read more about it in Genesis chapter 38. And then Rahab, also in Jesus's genealogy, she ran a brothel. And you can read this in the book of Joshua. So she sneakily helps out the Israelites so that they could take over her own city of Jericho. And then she married one of those Israelites so that she would be part of this Israelite tribe before she was the great grandma of Jesus. Ruth, she was a Moabite. She was a Moabite and she was a foreigner. And through a whole bunch of terrible circumstances, she ended up with Boaz, who became King David's grandma. Can you believe that Ruth, a foreigner, was part of the line of King David? And then there's Bathsheba. If you know this story, she was just this innocent woman whom King David spied on a roof while she was bathing. And then he decided that he wanted to have her. So he had her husband, Uriah, killed in battle so that David could claim her as his own. And she would eventually have the future king, Solomon. But here's the rub that is put into the genealogy of Jesus. Matthew calls her the wife of Uriah, doesn't even connect her to Solomon or to David. There are sex scandals all around, unexpected, unplanned pregnancies, all of it. But what it says that Jesus came from this long line of black sheep. Jesus came into the world through this genealogy of outsiders and sinners and foreigners, the unsavoriest type of people whose shame lasted for generations after their life. And the Bible doesn't even shy away from it for just a second. It just names it there so clearly. My friends, here's the thing we learn from the black sheep of our lives, that Jesus came for all people, like the ones in your family that you don't even talk about, or even those ones that seem like they have it all together, but you know secretly that they don't. Jesus came for you, and Jesus came for me. So whatever's going on in your own awkward family, please hear this. God gets it. Jesus gets it, because it happened in his family too. Have a good day.